Ms. Hill, we welcome you.
Good morning.
And the floor is yours.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, at our last hearing last week, we discussed information that the intelligence community had available prior to September 11th, 2001, regarding the September 11th hijackers. Today, as the chairman has alluded to, I will discuss two additional topics. First, the July 10th, 2001 electronic communication, or EC, from the FBI's Phoenix field office to FBI headquarters, also known as the Phoenix memo, or in this statement as the Phoenix EC, and the investigation prior to September 11th, 2001 of Zacarias Moussaoui. As mentioned last week, I want to again emphasize the significance of these areas, not just individually, but also, perhaps more importantly, when viewed collectively. Information regarding all three areas was available in the same section at the Federal Bureau of Investigation's headquarters in late August 2001. Two of these areas were addressed in the Director of Central Intelligence's Counter-Terrorist Center at approximately the same time. Yet, no one apparently saw the potential collective significance of the information, despite the increasing concerns throughout the summer of 2001 about an impending terrorist attack. I'm first going to discuss the Phoenix electronic communication. The FBI special agent in Phoenix, who I am told will be here testifying later this morning, who wrote the EC, told the Joint Inquiry staff that he first became concerned about aviation-related terrorism in the early 1990s. He was working on two cases in which Libyans with suspected terrorist ties were working for U.S. aviation companies. In addition, several bin Laden operatives had lived and traveled to the Phoenix area in the past, including a bin Laden lieutenant convicted for his role in the 1998 embassy bombings. The Phoenix agent believes that that individual established an Osama bin Laden support network in Arizona while he was living there, and that this network is still in place. In writing the EC, the Phoenix agent said he never imagined terrorists using airplanes as was done on September 11th. His primary concern was that Islamic extremists studying everything from aviation security to flying could be learning how to hijack or destroy aircraft and to evade airport security. In April 2000, the agent interviewed the individual who was to become the subject of the Phoenix EC. When he normally interviews young foreign nationals, he told us that they usually tend to be at least somewhat intimidated in their first contact with an FBI agent. By contrast, this individual told the agent directly that he considered the U.S. government and the U.S. military legitimate targets of Islam. In looking around the individual's apartment, the agent noticed a poster of bin Laden and another poster of wounded Chechnyan Mujahideen fighters. He was also concerned by the fact that this individual was from a poor Middle Eastern country and had been studying a non-aviation related subject prior to his arrival in the United States. Another incident that increased the agent's suspicion about Middle Eastern flight students in the Phoenix area. During a physical surveillance of the subject of the Phoenix EC, the agent determined that he was using a vehicle registered to another individual. In 1999, the owner of the car and an associate of his were detained for trying to gain access to the cockpit of a commercial airliner on a domestic flight. They were released after an investigation. The FBI closed the case, and the two were not prosecuted. A year later, the individual's name was added to the State Department's watch list after intelligence information was received indicating that he may have gotten explosive and car bomb training in Afghanistan. In August 2001, that same individual applied for a visa to re-enter the United States, and as a result of the watch listing was denied entry. In May 2001, the Phoenix agent became increasingly concerned by the number of individuals of potential investigative interest enrolled in aviation training. At that point, he began to draft the EC, which focuses on 10 individuals who were the subjects of FBI investigations. Not all were in flight training. Several were aeronautical engineering students, and one was studying international aviation security. One of the individuals under investigation was the primary focus of the Phoenix EC. That individual was a member of the Al-Muhajirun, whose spiritual leader was a strong supporter of bin Laden and who had issued a number of fatwas against the United States, one mentioning airports as a possible target. The subject of the Phoenix investigation was taking aviation-related security courses. As a member of the Al-Muhajirun, he was organizing anti-U.S. and anti-Israeli rallies and calling for jihad. The investigation of this individual led to the opening of investigations on 6 of his associates, also involved in aviation training. We asked the Phoenix agent whether he had received any intelligence from FBI headquarters or from other intelligence community agencies that contributed to the suspicions he raised in the EC. According to the agent, the Phoenix office did not receive FBI, intelligence community, or foreign intelligence service products on a regular basis. He told us that he believes that prior to September 11, 2001, the FBI was not running counterterrorism as a national level program. He often has felt that he's, quote, out on an island, close quote, in Phoenix. He said that prior to headquarters downsizing, the FBI used to do a better job of disseminating intelligence products to the field. He does not believe that sufficient resources are devoted to counterterrorism, even though it is officially a Tier 1 program. In his words, counterterrorism and counterintelligence have always been considered, quote, bastard stepchild of the FBI because these programs do not generate the statistics that other programs do. The Phoenix EC requested that FBI headquarters consider implementing 4 recommendations. 1, headquarters should accumulate a list of civil aviation university colleges around the country. 2, FBI offices should establish liaison with those schools. 3, headquarters should discuss the Phoenix theories with the intelligence community. And 4, headquarters should consider seeking authority to obtain visa information on individuals seeking to attend flight schools. On July 30th, 2001, an intelligence assistant in the Radical Fundamentalist Unit, or RFU, at FBI headquarters assigned the lead on the Phoenix EC to an intelligence operations specialist. The RFU IOS, in turn, contacted an IOS, intelligence operations specialist, in the Osama bin Laden unit to effect a transfer. The UBLU IOS then consulted 2 other operations specialists, intelligence operations specialists, in her unit. Their discussions centered on the legality of the visa information proposal and whether it raised profiling issues. On August 7, 2001, the EC was forwarded to an intelligence analyst in the Portland office, stating that the document, quote, basically puts forth a theory on individuals being directed to come here to study aviation and their ties to extremists. Nothing concrete or whatever, but some very interesting coincidences. I thought it would be interesting to you, considering some of the stuff you were coming up with in PD, Portland. Let me know if anything strikes you, close quote. The Portland analyst has said that she had spoken to the IOS at the UBL unit on several occasions about the aviation-related ties of terrorist subjects in the Portland and Seattle areas. She did not take action on the communication or disseminate it any further, as it was only sent to her for informational purposes. On August 7, 2001, both IOSs decided that the lead should be closed. In the electronic system, the RFU IOS noted that the lead was, quote, covered, consulted with UBLU, no action at this time, will reconvene on this issue, close quote. The UBLU IOS maintains that she fully intended to return to the project once she had time to do additional research, but that September 11th occurred, and she had not yet had an opportunity to do so. Both IOSs also said that they considered assigning the Phoenix project to a headquarters analytic unit, but decided against it. In an interview with a supervisory agent in the UBLU, the staff was told that the EC should have been assigned to an analytic unit because it was a long-term, labor-intensive suggestion, and that analytic units would have more time to devote to it than the operational units. The chiefs of both the RFU and the UBLU informed the staff that they did not see the Phoenix communication prior to September 11th. Moreover, neither remembers even hearing about the flight school issue until after September 11th. The manner in which FBI headquarters handled the Phoenix EC provides a valuable window into the FBI's operational environment prior to September 11th and illustrates several procedural weaknesses that have been recognized and are currently being addressed. The manner in which the EC was handled demonstrated how strategic analysis took a back seat to operational priorities prior to September 11. That many in the U.S. government believed an attack of some type was imminent in the summer of 2001 apparently only served to further de-emphasize strategic analysis. For example, the IOS handling the Phoenix EC was primarily concerned with an individual in the EC who was connected to individuals arrested overseas. The IOS paid less attention to the flight school theories. For his part, the RFU chief said he was seeing about 100 pieces of mail daily and could not keep up. His solution was to assign the review of intelligence reports to his IOS. Even the analytic unit responsible for strategic analysis was largely producing tactical products to satisfy the operational section. In fact, there was no requirement to handle projects with nationwide impact, such as Phoenix, any different than any other project. This now has been changed. Any lead of the type, such as Phoenix, represented must now be raised to the section chief level. The handling of the Phoenix EC also exposed information sharing problems between FBI headquarters elements. A number of analysts commented that the UBLU and the RFU frequently do not share information with the International Terrorism Analytic Unit. Had the project been transferred to the analytic unit, the capability to conduct strategic analysis on Al-Qaeda was limited because 5 of the unit's analysts had transferred into operational units. The handling of the Phoenix EC also illustrates the extent to which technological limitations affect information flow at the FBI. A number of individuals who were addressees on the EC stated that they did not see it prior to September 11th. The FBI's electronic system is not designed to ensure that all addressees on a communication actually receive it. Furthermore, the system is capable of recognizing units only if they are precisely designated in the leads section. Otherwise, a unit would not receive the communication. In fact, the electronic system was considered so unreliable that many FBI personnel, both at the field offices and at headquarters, used email instead. Several FBI personnel interviewed conceded that it was possible that routine leads on which there was no direct communication were falling through the cracks. The Joint Inquiry staff has been informed that the FBI recently determined that there are 68,000 outstanding and unassigned leads assigned to the Counterterrorism Division dating back to 1995. Since many FBI personnel have not been using the electronic system for these purposes, it is difficult to know how many of these leads have actually been completed. We are told that the Counterterrorism Division's management is currently looking into this situation. FBI officials have noted, both in public statements and in congressional testimony, that the September 11th hijackers did not associate with anyone of investigative interest. However, there is some evidence that hijacker Hani Hanjour, who was unknown to the intelligence community and law enforcement agencies prior to September 11th, 2001, was an associate of an individual mentioned in the Phoenix EC. This individual had been engaged in flight training in the United States, and the FBI believed that he was possibly a radical fundamentalist. The FBI believes that as early as 1997, Hanjour and the individual named in the Phoenix EC trained together at a flight school in Arizona. Several instructors at the flight school say that they were associates, and one thinks they may have carpooled together. The FBI has confirmed at least 5 occasions when the Phoenix subject and Hanjour were at the flight school on the same day. On one occasion in 1999, the flight school logs indicate that Hanjour and this individual used the same plane. According to the flight instructor, the individual mentioned in the EC was there as an observer. The rules of the school were such that for this individual to observe, Hanjour would have had to approve of his presence in the aircraft. Another individual informed the FBI that this individual named in the EC and Hanjour knew each other, both from flight training and through a religious center in Arizona. The FBI's evidence linking the two in the summer of 2001 is not as strong. The FBI has located records from the flight school in Phoenix indicating that on one day in June 2001, Hanjour and several other individuals signed up to use the Cessna simulator. The next day, the 2 individuals who signed up with Hanjour the previous day came to the facility with the individual mentioned in the Phoenix EC. Another employee of the flight school has placed Hanjour and the individual together during that time frame, although she was not completely confident in her identification. The FBI attempted to investigate this individual in May of 2001, but discovered that he was out of the country. The FBI was apparently unaware that he had returned to the United States soon after and may have been associating with Hanjour and several other Islamic extremists. A Phoenix agent told the staff that had the individual been in the country in May 2001, they would have opened an investigation. However, the Phoenix office generally did not open investigations on individuals who they believed had permanently left the United States. The Phoenix office also did not notify the INS, State Department, or the CIA of their interest in this individual. No one can say whether the FBI would have developed an investigative interest in Hanjour had they opened an investigation on the individual mentioned in the Phoenix EC prior to September 11th. If the hijackers were, in fact, associating with individuals of investigative interest, there are more significant questions as to whether or not they should have come to the FBI's attention prior to the attacks. These associations continue to raise questions about the FBI's knowledge and understanding of the radical fundamentalist network in the United States prior to September 11th. The Phoenix EC was not the first occasion that the FBI had been concerned about terrorist groups sending individuals to the United States for aviation study. Neither the individual involved in drafting the Phoenix EC nor the FBI personnel who worked on it at headquarters were aware of this broader context. In March 1983, the INS published a rule in the Federal Register terminating the non-immigrant status of Libyan nationals or individuals acting on behalf of Libyan entities engaged in aviation or nuclear-related education. The INS turned to the FBI for assistance in locating any such individuals. In May 1983, FBI headquarters sent a, quote, priority, close quote, communication to all field offices, asking them for assistance in complying with the INS request. The Joint Inquiry staff has not been able to locate all of the relevant records, so it is not clear how many students the FBI located and deported. In 1998, the chief pilot of the FBI's Oklahoma City field office contacted an agent on the counterterrorism squad to inform him that he had observed large numbers of Middle Eastern males at Oklahoma flight schools. An intra-office communication to the counterterrorism squad noted the chief pilot's concern that the aviation education might be related to planned terrorist activity, and his speculation that light planes would be an ideal means of spreading chemical or biological agents. The communication was sent to the office's Weapons of Mass Destruction control file. It appears to have been for informational purposes only. There is no indication that any follow-up action was either requested or conducted. The FBI also received reporting in 1998 that a terrorist organization might be planning to bring students to the United States for training at flight schools. The FBI was aware that individuals connected to the organization had performed surveillance and security tests at U.S. airports and made comments suggesting an intention to target civil aviation. There is no indication that the organization actually followed through on their plans. In 1999, reporting was received that yet another terrorist organization was planning to send students to the United States for aviation training. The purpose of this training was unknown, but the terrorist organization leaders viewed the requirement as being, quote, particularly important, close quote, and were reported to have approved an open-ended amount of funding to ensure its success. In response, an operational unit in the counterterrorism section at FBI headquarters sent a communication to all 24 field offices, asking them to pay close attention to Islamic students in their area from the target country who were engaged in aviation training. The communication requested that field offices, quote, task sources coordinate with the INS and conduct other logical inquiries in an effort to develop an intelligence baseline, close quote, regarding this terrorist group's use of students. To date, we have found no indication that the FBI field offices conducted any investigation after receiving the communication. In November 1999, the FBI sent a letter to INS explaining the intelligence and requesting a database search for individuals studying in the United States from the target country. According to interviews, the INS never provided any information in response to the request. The project was subsequently assigned to the International Terrorism Analytic Unit at FBI headquarters. The analyst assigned to the project determined that there were 75 academic institutions offering flight education in the United States and an additional 1,000 flight schools. In November 2000, the analyst sent a communication to the FBI field offices informing them that no information was uncovered concerning this terrorist group's recruitment of students studying aviation, and stated that, quote, further investigation by FBI field office is deemed imprudent, close quote, by FBI headquarters. The former unit chief of the operational unit involved in this project told the Joint Inquiry staff that he was not surprised by the apparent lack of vigorous investigative action by the field offices. In his opinion, the field offices did not like to undertake difficult, labor-intensive projects like this with a high risk of failure. He told us that the FBI's culture often prevented headquarters from forcing field offices to take investigative action that they were unwilling to take. The Phoenix EC was also sent to 2 investigators in the FBI's New York field office who specialize in Osama bin Laden cases. They were asked to, quote, read and clear, close quote, but were not asked to take any follow-up action. A joint inquiry staff audit of electronic records shows that at least 3 people in New York saw the EC prior to September 11th. It does not appear to have received much attention or elicited much concern. 2 of the 3 do not recall the communication prior to September 11th. The third remembered reading it, but said it did not resonate with him because he found it speculative. The New York agents stated that they were well aware that Middle Eastern men frequently came to the United States for flight training. A communication noting that Middle Eastern men with ties to bin Laden were receiving flight training in the United States would not necessarily be considered particularly alarming, because New York personnel knew that individuals connected to al-Qaeda had previously received flight training in the United States. In fact, one of these individuals trained at the Airman Flight School in Norman, Oklahoma, the same place where Zacharias Moussaoui trained prior to his arrival in Minnesota. Mohammed Atta and another of the hijackers visited this same flight school, but decided not to enroll there. The commonly held view at the FBI prior to September 11th was that bin Laden needed pilots to operate aircraft he had purchased in the United States to move men and material. Mr. Chairman, I also will now turn to the investigation by the FBI of Zacharias Moussaoui. Zacharias Moussaoui also first came to the attention of the FBI during the summer of 2001.
Ms. Hill, may I interrupt for a
Yeah.
moment, please? We are advised that there is a vote on in the Senate, and I yield to Senator Graham.
Ms. Hill, would this be an appropriate place to break for the members of the Senate to be able to make this vote?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I think so, because I'm about to start on the Moussaoui case.
Then I would recommend to our Senate members that we vote and return as expeditiously as possible. In recess.
I wouldn't tell him that. That wouldn't do it. Because we want all members to hear the opening presentation and the opening statements of the witnesses that we'll have later, we will be in recess until the return of the Senate.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
The committee will please come back to order, and we will continue the hearing, which has been suspended for the vote of the Senate. I note the two of the big four are back. I also would like to, with great pride, take a moment of privilege and introduce to our colleagues on both sides the leadership of tomorrow from Southwest Florida. We have about 25 of the students and seniors who are up here with the congressional classroom, who are observing this hearing for a while this morning. And these folks worked hard to get here. They will be here for a week following members around, learning about the executive branch and so forth. It's an excellent idea, and I urge other colleagues to consider it. It's the most rewarding thing I think I do as a member of Congress, is have the privilege of hosting these folks and following up with them. We've been doing it for 14 years, and many of them gone on to be great leaders. So it's a useful thing. If any other of the members has similar here, we will be glad to recognize them as we go along. Returning to the business at hand, Ms. Hill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Zacharias Moussaoui also first came to the attention of the FBI during the summer of 2001, at a time when the intelligence community was detecting numerous indicators of an impending terrorist attack against U.S. interests. Moussaoui has been indicted and faces a criminal trial this fall. Among other things, Moussaoui has been charged with federal charges of conspiracy to commit aircraft piracy, quote, with the result that thousands of people died on September 11th, 2001, close quote. In order to avoid affecting the course of that proceeding, the Joint Inquiry staff has limited the amount of detail in this presentation while attempting to provide a general understanding of the facts of the investigation. And I want to take just a moment to update the members of the committees on where we are regarding the limitations on what we can say about the Moussaoui case vis-a-vis the criminal trial that is pending in Alexandria. We had been working very closely with the Justice Department, and this is not a classification issue. This was over and above the review of the statement because of classification issues. We have been working very closely with the Justice Department to ensure that in no way we prejudice Mr. Moussaoui's right to a fair trial in the criminal case. And as of last Friday, the Justice Department, I believe it was last Friday, the Justice Department had filed a motion with Judge Brinkema, who is presiding over the criminal case, to clarify what the FBI witnesses who will be here this morning when I finish to testify can and cannot say in their testimony about the Moussaoui case. And the concern was that under the local rule 57 in the federal court in Virginia, that they would be prohibited from talking about some very broad categories of information, including, and I'll just mention a few, obviously anything that would comment on Mr. Moussaoui's guilt or innocence, anything that would reveal what trial witnesses would be testifying to, statements of witnesses, and also anything relating to statements of the defendant himself, Mr. Moussaoui. The Justice Department had asked the court to clarify to what degree that would limit the witness's ability to answer questions, and basically had asked that the court basically clarify those limitations so that we would know how to proceed this morning. The joint committees responded and did file a written response in the court on Monday, which was yesterday, and we had assumed we were trying to be cautious and proceeding by deleting a lot of the material in this statement that pertained to Moussaoui's statements or witness statements. Last night, late in the day, we received a written order from Judge Brinkema, who had ruled on the Justice Department motion and our response. And I will read to you, it's only a 3-page order. It was signed by her yesterday, but the important and pertinent part of it is the statement which responds to what witnesses can and cannot say in these hearings about the Moussaoui case. And I quote, "The joint inquiry made clear in its August 5, 2002 letter to the Assistant Attorney General for the Criminal Division the limited parameters of the inquiry and has reiterated in its reply that the committees will not ask witnesses to comment about the merits of the case. Indeed, the questions are expected to focus on, quote, and this is quoting from our motion, what government officials heard, observed, reasoned, recommended, and acted on or did not act on prior to September 11th, close quote. The committees are not interested in, quote, expressions of current judgment from government witnesses about the defendant's guilt or innocence, or the government's plans for presenting its case, close quote." And this is the pertinent part. The judge ruled, quote, "Given the ground rules articulated by the joint inquiry, FBI personnel should have no difficulty responding to Congress's questions without violating Local Rule 57 or any other order of this court. Accordingly, the renewed expedited motion for clarification is denied." So Judge Brinkema, as of last night, has, I think, made it clear that the witnesses are free to answer questions about, quote from her motion, her order, what government officials heard, observed, reasoned, recommended, and acted on or did not act on prior to September 11th, close quote. Obviously, and she mentions this in the order, and we had represented to her that we are not asking the witnesses to come and testify on whether or not they believe Mr. Moussaoui is innocent or guilty or on the merits of the criminal case or plans for presenting evidence in the criminal case. But to the extent we can go into what people knew or heard or did prior to the 11th without talking about the merits of the case, I believe the judge has pretty clearly stated that that is permissible and would not violate the local rule. Now, my only other caveat is that our statement included more detail which was taken out before this order was entered, and so we will probably at a later date now go back and try for the record to reinsert some of the detail that was in here, consulting with the Department of Justice on that.
Mr. Chairman, could we get a copy of the judge's order disseminated to all members
That shall be done.
we begin any examination?
And I believe, in fact, there was some effort to get them in the books. I'm not sure it's the full order. Is there a tab?
I believe it's
In the book.
If
It
you'll
is
check
in the
your
book.
tabs,
It's
if
in
we
the-
got the job done, this just came in. I believe most of the books were updated.
It's only a 3-page order, and Mr. Chairman, I would also ask that
Tab
you
9.
make this part of the record, the judge's order.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman, when the material is reinserted and then put in the record, could Ms. Hill give us a copy of the reinsertion highlighting the material which has been reinserted, which was not in her report, which she is presenting today?
The answer to that, Senator, is yes. In fact, the principals had discussed a way to do that this morning and make sure everybody understands what has been of particular interest to us, which we are now free to highlight again.
All right, with that caveat, I will proceed to read the highlights of this statement. Our review of the FBI's investigation to date has identified 3 issues in particular to which I would draw members' attention. The differences in the way the FBI field offices and headquarters components analyzed and perceived the danger posed by the facts uncovered during the FBI's investigation of Moussaoui prior to September 11th. The tools available to the FBI under the Constitution and laws of the United States to investigate that danger, notably the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act, FISA, and whether FBI personnel were well organized and informed about the availability of those tools, and whether the substance, clarity, and urgency of the threat warning provided by the FBI to other parts of the intelligence community corresponded to the danger that had been identified. The FBI's focus at the time Moussaoui was taken into custody appears to the staff to have been almost entirely on investigating specific crimes and not on identifying linkages between separate investigations or on sharing information with other U.S. government agencies with counter-terrorist responsibilities. No one at FBI headquarters apparently connected Moussaoui, the Phoenix memo, the possible presence of Khalid al-Midhar and Nawaf al-Hazmi in the United States, and the flood of warnings about possible terrorist attacks during the summer of 2001. The staff has determined that Moussaoui contacted the Airman Flight School in Norman, Oklahoma on September 29, 2000, and expressed interest in taking lessons to fly a small Cessna aircraft. On February 23rd, he entered the United States at Chicago's O'Hare Airport, traveling on a French passport that allowed him to stay in the United States with a visa for 90 days. On February 26th, he began flight lessons at Airman Flight School. On August 11th, 2001, Moussaoui and his roommate, Hussein El Attas, arrived in Eagan, Minnesota, and checked into a hotel. Moussaoui began classes at Pan Am Flight School there on August 13, 2001. While Airman Flight School provided flight lessons in piloting Cessnas and similar small aircraft, Pan Am Flight School provided ground training and access to a Boeing 747 flight simulator used by professional pilots. Most of Pan Am's students are either newly hired airline pilots who use the flight simulator for initial training, or are active airline pilots who use the equipment for an update or refresher training. Although anyone can sign up for lessons at Pan Am, the typical student has a pilot's license, is employed by an airline, and has several thousand flight hours. Moussaoui had none of these qualifications. Based on concerns expressed by a private citizen, the FBI's Minneapolis field office opened an international terrorism investigation of Moussaoui on August 15, 2001. Agents of the INS share space and work closely with the FBI in Minneapolis, and were able to immediately determine that Moussaoui had been authorized to stay in the United States only until May 22nd. Thus, Moussaoui was out of status at the time, August, that the FBI began investigating him. On the same day the Minneapolis field office learned about Moussaoui, it asked both the CIA and the FBI's legal attaché in Paris for any information they had or could get on Moussaoui. They also informed FBI headquarters of the investigation. The supervisory agent in Minneapolis told the Joint Inquiry staff that FBI headquarters had suggested that Moussaoui be put under surveillance, but that Minneapolis did not have enough agents to do that. The Minneapolis agents also believed that it was more important to prevent Moussaoui from getting any additional flight training. After Moussaui's detention, the Minneapolis supervisory agent called the office's legal counsel and asked if there was any way to search Moussaui's possessions without his consent. He was told he had to obtain a search warrant. Over the ensuing days, the Minneapolis agents considered several alternatives, including trying to obtain a criminal search warrant, seeking a search warrant under FISA, and deporting Moussaoui to France after arranging for French authorities to search his possessions and share their findings with the FBI. On Saturday, August 18th, Minneapolis sent a detailed memorandum to FBI headquarters. That memorandum described the Moussaoui investigation and stated that it believed that Moussaoui posed a threat. The Joint Inquiry staff has been told that FBI headquarters advised against trying to obtain a criminal search warrant, as that might prejudice any subsequent efforts to try to get a search warrant under FISA. Under FISA, a search warrant could be obtained if they could show there was probable cause to believe Moussaoui was an agent of a foreign power and either engaged in terrorism or was preparing to engage in terrorism. FBI headquarters was concerned that if a criminal warrant was denied and then the agents tried to get a warrant under FISA, the court would think the agents were trying to use authority for an intelligence investigation to pursue a criminal case. Minneapolis also wanted to notify the criminal division about Moussaoui through the local U.S. Attorney's Office, believing it was obligated to do so under Attorney General guidelines that require notification where there is, quote, reasonable indication of a felony. FBI headquarters advised Minneapolis that they did not have enough evidence to warrant notifying the criminal division. The FBI case agent in Minneapolis had become increasingly frustrated with what he perceived as a lack of assistance from the Radical Fundamentalist Unit, RFU, at FBI headquarters. He had had previous conflicts with the RFU over FISA issues and believed headquarters was not being responsive to the threat Minneapolis had identified. The Minneapolis case agent contacted an FBI official who was detailed to the CTC. The Minneapolis agent shared the details of the Moussaoui case with him and provided the names of associates that had been connected to Moussaoui. The Minneapolis case agent has told the staff that he was looking for any information that CTC could provide that would strengthen the case linking Moussaoui to international terrorism. On August 21, 2001, the case agent sent an email to the supervisory special agent in the RFU who was handling this matter, urging that the United States Secret Service in Washington, D.C. be apprised of the threat potential there indicated by the evidence. The RFU agent to whom the email was addressed said that he told the Minneapolis agent that he was working on a notification to the entire intelligence community, including the Secret Service, about the threat presented by Moussaoui. The RFU supervisory agent sent a teletype on September 4, 2001, recounting the FBI's interviews of Moussaoui and al-Attas and other information it had obtained in the meantime. The teletype, however, did not place Moussaoui's actions in the context of the increased level of terrorist threats during the summer of 2001, nor did it provide its recipients with any analysis of Moussaoui's actions or plans or information about what type of threat he may have presented. On Wednesday, August 22nd, the legal attaché's office in Paris provided its report. That report began a series of discussions between Minneapolis and the RFU at headquarters, focusing on whether a specific group of Chechen rebels were a recognized foreign power, one that was on the State Department's list of terrorist groups and for which the FISA court had previously granted orders. The RFU agent believed that the Chechen rebels were not a recognized foreign power, and that even if Moussaoui were to be linked to them, the FBI could not obtain a search warrant under FISA. Thus, the RFU agent told the Minneapolis agents that they needed to somehow connect Moussaoui to al-Qaeda, which he believed was a recognized foreign power. Unfortunately, this dialogue was based on a misunderstanding of FISA. The FBI's Deputy General Counsel told the Joint Inquiry staff that the term, quote, recognized foreign power, close quote, has no meaning under FISA, and that the FBI can obtain a search warrant under FISA for an agent of any international terrorist group, including the Chechen rebels. But because of this misunderstanding, Minneapolis spent the better part of 3 weeks trying to connect the Chechen group to al-Qaeda. Ultimately, the RFU agent agreed to submit Minneapolis FISA requests to the attorneys in the FBI's National Security Law Unit for review. The FBI attorneys advised the RFU agent that the evidence was insufficient to link Moussaoui to a foreign power. The attorneys told our staff that if they had been aware of the Phoenix memo, they would have forwarded the FISA request to the Justice Department's Office of Intelligence Policy Review. They reasoned that the particulars of the Phoenix memo changed the context of the Moussaoui investigation and made a stronger case for the FISA warrant. None of them saw the Phoenix memo before September 11th. 2 FBI agents assigned to the Oklahoma City Field Office's International Terrorism Squad visited Airman Flight School in Norman, Oklahoma, regarding Moussaoui on August 23rd. In September of 1999, one of those agents had been assigned a lead to visit the same flight school concerning another individual who had been identified as bin Laden's personal pilot and who had received flight training at Airman. Although the agent told us that he thought that this lead had been the most significant information he had seen in Oklahoma City, the agent did not remember the lead when he returned to the flight school 2 years later to ask questions about Moussaoui. He said that he should have connected the 2 visits, but that he did not have the time to do so. During a conversation on August 27, 2001, the RFU unit at headquarters told the Minneapolis supervisor that the supervisor was getting people, quote, spun up, close quote, over Moussaoui. According to his notes and his statement to the Joint Inquiry staff, the supervisor replied that he was trying to get people at FBI headquarters spun up because he was trying to make sure that Moussaoui, quote, did not take control of a plane and fly it into the World Trade Center, close quote. The Minneapolis agent said that the headquarters agent told him, quote, "That's not going to happen. We don't know he's a terrorist. You don't have enough to show he is a terrorist. You have a guy interested in this type of aircraft. That is it," close quote. The headquarters agent does not remember this exchange. The Minneapolis supervisor told the staff that he had no reason to believe that Moussaoui was planning an attack on the World Trade Center. He was merely trying to get headquarters attention. On August 28, 2001, after reviewing the request for a search warrant, the RFU agent edited it and returned the request to Minneapolis for comment. The RFU agent says that it was not unusual for headquarters agents to make changes to field submissions, in addition to changes made by the NSLU and OIPR. The major substantive change that was made was the removal of information about connections between the Chechen rebels and al-Qaeda. After the edit was complete, the RFU agent briefed the FBI Deputy General Inquiry staff that he agreed with the RFU agent that there was insufficient information to show that Moussaoui was an agent of a foreign power. After that briefing, the RFU agent told Minneapolis that the information was even less sufficient than he had previously thought, because Moussaoui would actually have to be shown to be a part of a movement or an organization. After concluding that there was insufficient information to show that Moussaoui was an agent of any foreign power, the FBI's focus shifted to arranging for Moussaui's planned deportation to France on September 17th. Although the FBI was no longer considering a search warrant under FISA, no one revisited the idea of attempting to obtain a criminal search warrant, even though the reason for not attempting to obtain a criminal search warrant, the concern that it would prejudice a request under FISA, no longer existed. On Thursday, September 4th, 2001, FBI headquarters sent a teletype to the intelligence community and other U.S. government agencies, including the FAA, providing information about the Moussaoui investigation. The teletype noted that Moussaoui was being held in custody, but did not describe any particular threat that the FBI thought he posed. For example, whether he might be connected to a larger plot. The teletype also did not recommend that the addressees take any action or look for any additional indicators of a terrorist attack, nor did it provide any analysis of a possible hijacking threat or provide any specific warnings. The following day, the Minneapolis case agent hand-carried the teletype to 2 employees of the FAA's Bloomington, Minnesota office and orally briefed them on the status of the investigation. The 2 FAA employees told our staff that the FBI agent did not convey any sense of urgency about the teletype and did not ask them to take any specific action regarding Moussaoui. He just wanted to be sure the FAA had received the cable. The final preparations for Moussaui's deportation were underway when the September 11th attacks occurred. And I want to just add, in conclusion, a few comments. The staff has described 3 series of events pertaining to al-Midhar and al-Hazmi, the Phoenix EC, and Zacarias Moussaoui, each of which raises significant questions in their own right. In the wake of the September 11th attacks, they also illustrate the danger of seeing events in isolation from each other. In our view, taken together, they clearly demonstrate how our counterterrorist efforts must be based on comprehensive and current understanding of the overall context in which terrorist networks like al-Qaeda operate. During last week's hearing, we focused on the story involving al-Midhar and al-Hazmi and the problems which it illustrated about the use of information derived from intelligence gathering activities in criminal investigations. This morning, I want to comment on the 2 matters we discussed in today's testimony. The second matter, the Phoenix EC, also illustrates the intelligence community's strengths and weaknesses. An FBI agent perceived, amidst a profusion of cases, that terrorists could use the well-developed system of flight training education in the United States to prepare an attack against us. The field agent understood that it was necessary to go beyond individual cases and to undertake an empirical analysis broader than the geographic limits of a single field office. The idea was submitted to FBI headquarters, where, for a variety of reasons, it generated almost no interest. First, no one gleaned from the FBI's own records that others at the Bureau had previously expressed concerns about possible terrorists at U.S. flight education institutions. Second, anticipating future threats has not been a significant part of the FBI's general approach to its work. Third, the highest levels of the intelligence community had not communicated effectively to its personnel the critical importance of analyzing information in light of the growing awareness of an impending terrorist attack in the summer of 2001. Finally, FBI management did not perceive it would be useful to simply alert others at the FBI to the danger that one of its field offices had perceived. As for the third matter, one can see in the pre-September 11th handling of the case of Zacarias Moussaoui a myopic focus within both the FBI and the DCI's CTC on the case at hand. An FBI field agent and his supervisor saw a potential threat, were concerned about the possibility of a larger plot to target airlines, and reported their concerns to FBI headquarters. The Moussaoui information was also shared with the DCI's CTC. But neither FBI headquarters nor the DCI's CTC linked this information to warnings emanating from the CTC in the summer of 2001 about an impending terrorist attack, nor did they see a possible connection to information available on August 23, 2001, that bin Laden operatives had entered the United States. The same unit at FBI headquarters also had the Phoenix EC, but still did not sound any alarm bells. No one will ever know whether a greater focus on the connection between these events would have led to the unraveling of the September 11th plot. But clearly, it might have drawn greater attention to the possibility of a terrorist attack within the United States, generated a heightened state of alert regarding such attacks, and prompted more aggressive investigation and intelligence gathering regarding the information that our government did possess prior to September 11th. Mr. Chairman, that concludes my statement this morning.